You know, when we hear the name P.T. Barnum, we usually picture a loud, flashy opportunist, right? The ultimate showman who just got incredibly lucky by tricking the masses. But what if I told you that couldn't be further from the truth? What if the real secret to his immense wealth was actually a calculated, heavily engineered system of behavioral mechanics? Well, in this explainer, we're tearing down the ultimate wealth blueprint. We're going to completely challenge that everyday narrative and look at his actual strategies, laid out like a literal gear-driven machine. So let's just jump right in.
So there's this massive paradox when it comes to Barnum. We've got the myth of the humbug opportunist, this idea that he just relied on blind instinct, loud publicity, and basically deceiving people for a quick buck. But the reality? It's entirely different. If you were to peel back the curtain, you wouldn't find chaos. You'd find a man who was, above all else, a brilliant behavioral mechanic. He wasn't just throwing spaghetti at the wall to see what stuck. He was actively managing human habits as a strict mathematical utility. He literally engineered these closed-loop systems of public trust, where every single calculated action was designed to produce a highly specific financial output.
We really have to explicitly smash this preconceived myth right off the bat. Barnum did not operate on instinct and flash. He operated on optimized behavior, pure mathematics, and systematic control. In fact, he had this core, absolutely foundational belief that governed every single thing he did. He believed that there is no such thing in the world as luck. Think about how powerful that mindset shift actually is. If there's no luck, then there's only cause and effect, right? There are only inputs and outputs. And if you want a certain output, like, say, lasting wealth, you simply have to build the right machine and feed it the correct inputs.
Let's start with engine number 1, the clear brain equation. This is the very first mechanical component of Barnum's blueprint, and it's absolutely crucial. He framed human biology not as something separate from your career, but as the foundational engine of your business. You literally cannot separate your physical machinery from your financial machinery. Barnum talked about the difference between a clear system and a narcotized system. A clear system leads straight to accurate judgment. But if your system is narcotized, clouded by things like tobacco and alcohol, it completely fractures. Barnum argued that a healthy body is the absolute substratum of fortune. If you introduce unmitigated evils into your system, you get what he called a cognitive muddle, which mathematically guarantees you're going to make foolish bargains and miss out on huge chances.
Without absolute biological clarity, the mathematics of the rest of your machine just cannot function. Barnum actually stated that you need precise business reasoning to see that 2 and 2 make 4. Now, I know that sounds ridiculously simple, almost insulting even, but think about it for a second. When your brain is in a cognitive muddle, when you're exhausted, completely stressed out, or chemically altered, 2 and 2 suddenly looks like 5. You make terrible investments, you miss completely obvious opportunities. Basically, if engine 1 is broken, the whole factory just shuts down.
Moving on to engine number 2, the spigot and the bunghole.
Assuming you've got your biological engine running nice and clear, we move into the financial mechanics. Barnum used this absolutely unforgettable metaphor for structural wealth management. Imagine a leaking barrel. Up at the very top, you have a tiny little faucet, the spigot, just dripping a few drops of savings. But down at the bottom, the bunghole is completely blown out, and there is a massive torrent of resources just pouring right onto the floor. This is what he called false economy. It's the person who obsesses over saving absolute pennies at the top spigot, like, skipping a $2 coffee, while completely ignoring the massive structural expenses blowing out the bottom, like a giant mortgage they can't actually afford, or crushing high-interest debt.
The real danger here is the psychological toll of this false economy. Obsessing over what Barnum called cheese pairings, like saving old envelopes, actually causes cognitive load exhaustion. You are literally burning up your clear brain's energy on low-yield tasks. It makes you systemically penny-wise and pound-foolish. True economy is the exact opposite. It's about managing those high-level margins and large structural expenses. By doing that, you preserve your brain power for the major, needle-moving strategic decisions, and that is what creates a systemic margin of wealth.
All right, engine number 3, scaling curiosity via the Genin effect. Okay, so once your biology is clear and your economy is structurally sound, you are finally ready for the market multipliers. Barnum built these incredible machines to take raw, highly visible curiosity and convert it directly into sustained, massive consumer custom. Let's reverse engineer a perfect example of this. Barnum was bringing the ridiculously famous singer Jenny Lind to America, and the hype was just astronomical. He put the very first concert ticket up for auction. Now, a man named Genin, who happened to be a hatter, bought that very first ticket. But here's the genius part. This wasn't just a fan buying a seat. This was a calculated input into a national visibility grid.
Almost overnight, Geenan's name was telegraphed from Maine to Texas as the guy who bought the legendary first ticket. That's the multiplier effect in action, taking a single act and just blasting it across the country.
And let's look at the exact math of that input. Geenan spent precisely $225 of his capital on that single Jenny Lind concert ticket. Now, back then, that was an absolutely outrageous sum for one ticket. But he didn't view it as an expense. He viewed it as pure fuel for the multiplier machine. And the mathematical output is just staggering. Because his name was broadcast nationwide, Geenan ended up selling an extra 10,000 hats per year for the next 6 years. That is 60,000 extra hats sold simply because he fed that machine that initial $225 input. He scaled curiosity into a literal mountain of products sold. It's just pure, predictable behavioral mechanics.
Which brings us to the final piece, the architecture of lasting wealth.
Now, we have to bring all of these individual engines together, right? Because the biology, the financial mechanics, and the market multipliers, they don't exist in isolation. They form a single, cohesive blueprint. It's a masterpiece of architectural logic. All the components we've talked about, the clear brain, the true economy, making sure income beats out go, the undivided attention, the compound trust flywheel, they all just interlock perfectly. Lasting wealth isn't a matter of luck. It's a predictable outcome of specific mental and physical disciplines. By mastering your own nature, regulating your financial inputs to avoid that blown-out bunghole, and compounding public trust like Geenan and the Hatter, pecuniary independence becomes entirely inevitable. It is no longer just a wish, it actually becomes a mathematical certainty.
Barnum had this great saying, "The machine works exactly as it is built." If you build a machine that's optimized for distraction and debt, well, it will mathematically produce misery. But if you construct the blueprint we've just outlined, it will systematically produce wealth. I really want you to start applying these specific cogs, gears, and behavioral mechanics to engineer your own independence today. If you found this explainer valuable, please hit that subscribe button so we can keep analyzing the hidden blueprints of history's greatest minds. And I'll leave you with this final provocative thought. Take a hard look at your daily habits right now. What exact output is your current machine perfectly engineered to produce?